Hello, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm a youth and climate analyst within UNDP's Youth Global team based in New York. Welcome to the 8th episode of UNDP's Youth Climate Tour, a dialogue series focusing on South Africa after our episodes in North Macedonia, Rwanda, Malaysia, Honduras, Panama, Sao Tome and Principe, and Lebanon. The aim of these country dialogues is to feature UNDP's work on climate in partnership with youth stakeholders across different countries and regions in the lead up to the Youth for Climate Driving Ambition Summit in Milan at the end of the month, pre-COP and COP26 events, and Yango 16 Conference of Youth coming up later this year. After a short break, we are now resuming these weekly dialogues through which UNDP aims to hear about examples of UNDP support to youth meaningful participation in climate action across different countries and regions, present and brainstorm on methodologies for youth engagement at the national and local level, identify successful stories, promising practices, and entry points for enhanced support, collaboration, and joint implementation in the context of UNDP's climate promise and beyond. These dialogues only last 30 minutes, and we invite colleagues and partners to be concise and to the point. The recording of this conversation will be published in UNDP's for Youth YouTube channel and Spark Blue page. You can already check out the previous episodes on YouTube at UNDP for Youth. The outcome of this series will be featuring climate promise reports where relevant, newsletters including the Loop, UNDP Youth Empowerment Update, and capturing a crisp report that will be published on UNDP's Spark Blue webpage. I will now give the floor to our colleagues based in UNDP office in South Africa, who will facilitate the remaining 25 minutes. Can you please mute yourself? Okay. Together with the youth partners, we remind colleagues to give some time at the end to answer any questions from participants. Over to you, colleagues.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for that introduction. My name is Tove Nordberg. I work for the UNDP South Africa country office. We have a little bit of an issue on our side. We have two of our speakers haven't been able to connect to Zoom yet. It's my colleague Nokutula who will do the introduction from UNDP's side actually, and then Nokulunga, who is one of our youth speakers.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Nokutula Mene. I'm standing before you now representing Dr. Janice Goldberg, the focal point for nature, climate and energy in the UNDP country office in South Africa. The UNDP country office in South Africa has been working with the government of South Africa for more than 25 years and remains committed to supporting a just transition to a low carbon and climate resilient society. We continue striving to ensure that our work leaves no one behind, and this includes youth. Within the UNDP South Africa Nature, Climate and Energy portfolio, we have a number of projects in the area of biodiversity, natural resource management, international waters, renewable energy access, and energy efficiency, mainly funded by the Global Environmental Facility, GEF. In the design of this project, we ensure that community engagement, gender mainstreaming, capacity building, and youth inclusion are prioritized. For example, through our project, the South African Wind Energy Project, which is implemented in collaboration with the South African Renewable Energy Technology Center, we have trained 2 cohorts of internationally accredited wind energy technicians consisting of 24 young graduates, of which 40% are women. Another example of how we have ensured the inclusion of youth in our projects is through the Biodiversity Land Use Project, which is implemented in collaboration with our partner, South African National Biodiversity Institute. The project aims to support municipalities in effectively regulating land use to ensure that biodiversity continues to provide essential ecosystem services to municipal residents. The project has contributed to capacitating 3 young environmental officers, and you will meet one of them here today. We are also implementing the UNDP Global Climate Promise project in South Africa in cooperation with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, specifically focusing on ensuring that South Africa's updated nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement and its implementation is gender responsive. On the slide that we are going to show you in a moment, you will see that we present a snapshot of 3 of our projects which are related to youth and climate work here in South Africa. We have a youth barometer project. I don't know, Toby, if you could assist me in showing the slide. The youth barometer project in cooperation with the Partnership for Action on Green Economy page and UNICEF that we are currently undertaking together with the National Youth Survey on Climate Change, Just Transition and Jobs, targeting the South African definition of youth, which is between 15 to 34 years old. The project aims to surface youth-based recommendations for the NDC's implementation and amplify South Africa's youth constituency. We also have a youth and climate robotics project, which is being pursued in cooperation with a range of partners and is a pilot project with the objective to equip educators and high school learners in digital skills to chart sustainable climate futures, specifically targeting SDG 7, SDG 13 and 15. We have one of the facilitators involved in the project here with us again today. Lastly, you will also see on the slide, if we could please get some help. I can see some messages that some people are not able to see the slide. Lastly, you will also see that we also have a circular economy project on food waste for inclusive growth. And under this project, the Food Waste Innovation Challenge is supporting 10 upcoming South African entrepreneurs. Our third speaker is one of the 10 entrepreneurs today. At this juncture, I'd like to hand back to you, Tove, and to introduce our 3 youth partners and just to wish the whole meeting well and hope our deliberations will continue well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Nokutula. And good morning and good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Tove Nordberg, and I work as the Climate and Environment Associate of the Undp South Africa Country Office. So with us here today, we have 3 fantastic young professionals that we work with in 3 of our projects. So I would like to again share my screen so that you can see a short introductory slide to them. So first out today, we have Brittany Bull, who is a research assistant at the South African National Biodiversity Institute, and she's also a facilitator in our Youth and Climate Robotics project. And then we have Himkar Singh, who is a waste to compost entrepreneur and engineer, and also founder of the Compost Kitchen that we work with through the UNDP Accelerator Lab. And we also have Nokulunga Goko, who is a Control Environmental Officer at the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning in the Western Cape Government. And we work together with Nokulunga through the Biodiversity and Land Use project that my colleague Nokutula previously introduced. So we asked our 3 youth representatives here today to share a bit of their journey and a story of their experiences so far as young professionals and climate champions in South Africa. So, and we asked them to first of all share a bit about their work and what drives them, and second of all to share maybe a challenge that they have faced throughout the journey, but also a success or an achievement that they are proud of that they would like to share. And thirdly, we've also asked them to share their views on the future outlook for meaningful youth participation in climate action in South Africa. So with that, I would like to hand over to the first speaker, Brittany Bull. So please take the floor. Over to you, Brittany.
Thank you, Tova. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Bull. I'm 22 years old. I was a space systems engineering major in the United States, and I've since paused my studies due to the COVID-19 pandemic and returned to South Africa. My journey in STEM and engineering started when I was in high school in 2015, when I was around 15 years old, with X in a Box Limited and FemSTEM, when they were running their first youth outreach for STEM education. And since then, I graduated high school in 2017 at Pilgrim Park High School on the Cape Flats, and I went on to intern with X in a Box Limited and FameSTEM during my gap year in 2018 on the research and development team when they were developing the X in a Box technology that I work with today and that is used in the Youth in Climate Robotics outreach program. And I got scouted by Moorhead State University to study space systems engineering at the campus and work as an undergraduate researcher on the cosmic X-ray background and lunar ice cube satellite missions. And my expertise is in satellites and modular electronics with a focus on STEM education and climate research. Since I've returned to South Africa, I am studying software development with CodeSpace, and I am a research assistant at SANB. And I started working again with X in a Box Limited as a facilitator in the Youth in Climate Robotics program in conjunction with the UNDP, teaching high school learners modular electronics and IoT and robotics with the use of the X in a Box technology and touching on the 3 SDG goals that the program focuses on, namely SDG 7, 13, and 15, with a focus on how solving problems shouldn't start at a specific age, that anyone can think of a solution and feasibly find a solution to that problem with the right tools and the right support. So that is a bit of my unconventional journey through STEM with a focus on helping the environment. And a challenge that was posed to me throughout my journey was inadequate access to education and opportunities in the area and the society and community that I grew up in and come from. And a solution to that was actually participating in outreach programs like the one I'm facilitating today. And I see that this sort of model would be a solution in finding more solutions to problems that affect us all, because one of the biggest issues is that we don't access enough of the young minds in our country and the world at large, because they don't have adequate access to education and opportunities that expose them to the possibility that they themselves can solve the problems that affect us all. The future direction that I see myself going into is continuing my research in satellite technologies and applying satellite technologies for climate research and continuing on in STEM education with a focus on modular electronics and IoT.
Thank you very much, Brittany, for sharing more about your journey as a space and climate champion. That was really great to hear. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Himkar, who is our second speaker, who will speak more about his own journey as a waste entrepreneur. Over to you, Himkar.
Thank you so much, Tuve, and thanks so much, UNDP, for this invite to speak at the climate tour. I have a background as an engineer in civil engineering, and I worked in consulting engineering for a while. But in 2017, there was quite a bad drought in South Africa, and I felt like we weren't quite solving that water management problem. I had already known a lot about the water system. So I decided to leave the country to study a master's degree in water management in Germany. And I lived in Germany for 5 months, and then I lived in Vietnam for 5 months, and then Jordan for 5 months to try and get all different kinds of perspectives on what the solution could be for South Africa. And the solution that I realized that we need to do in South Africa is repair our soil, because the soil is the most important component of the water cycle. Because if you can imagine, when the rain falls, the first point of contact of a raindrop is the soil. And everything that happens downstream is determined by what happens at that moment at the soil. But 60% of soil in South Africa is lacking organic matter, making it unarable, meaning you can't grow crops in it. And that's mainly because it's lacking organic matter, which organic matter is what makes the soil act like a sponge. It holds onto the water and then allows the water to infiltrate into the water table. But that system is broken now. So when it rains, the water just runs away quickly, and we don't get to use the full benefit of it. So I started the business called the Compost Kitchen in 2019 officially, where we collect food waste from households, things like banana peels and rotten fruit. And then we feed it to millions of earthworms called Icenia fetida. And then they eat it and they produce a feces known as vermicompost. And then we give the vermicompost back to customers at the end of the month. And that makes us a circular business because we're turning waste, the waste is returning to a customer in a different form and a more beneficial form. And it's been going quite well since COVID started, to be honest, because we found that there's a, in this kind of model, it's a very positive business. So a lot of people have been attracted to it because we're making a difference, a real impact. And it was also a time when people were spending more time at home and realizing how much waste they were producing and then wanting to do something about it. So we've been growing quite well in the last year, and we're looking to do some very interesting things in the next year. But the reason why we took this route, there's different routes you can take if you want to make progress towards the SDGs. We have our SDGs on the wall over there. Some of them are NPOs and NGOs, but we chose a business model because when I came back from studying, I didn't have any money left, and it would have been hard to find a job because the economy wasn't doing too well. So a business was the easiest thing to do because I can start a revenue for myself, but also because it's a lot easier to scale. So the more you grow the business, the more impact you do. And it tends to be self-sustaining. The profits can be used to grow the business. So we try to encourage more youth people to start entrepreneurship projects like this, with the intention of doing a full business model the way everyone else does it, but just with the value system that you're working towards, the SDGs. So that's why we're really glad to join this conference, is to try and connect with youth that have ideas and want to get something done. And so you can feel free to contact me through Tuve. But I'm also very glad to take any questions during the session. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for that, Timkar. And you truly have a very inspiring and incredible journey. So thank you very much for sharing some of your experiences as a waste entrepreneur. So with that, I'm going to hand over to our third speaker, which is Nokulunga. Over to you, Nokulunga.
Hi to everyone. My name is Nokulunga Godko. I am an environmental officer from the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Sorry for that. And I work as an environmental officer, which means we act basically on combating environmental degradation. So what we do is compliance monitoring and administrative enforcement. So basically, when we get a notification that there is an activity that's taking place that might be illegal, we then undertake compliance monitoring through in terms of desktop studies, as well as going for site inspection to actually verify if that activity is indeed taking place. And if it is, then we will undertake administrative enforcement by issuing directives and compliance notices, basically giving instructions to the person that's undertaking the illegal activity in terms of what they need to do going forward, such as you need to cease the activity and then rehabilitate the place. Or otherwise, they are allowed to apply for environmental authorization through Section 24G, but that has a fine associated to it because you've already done some damage to the environment. And the main success for me in my journey so far has always been being able to be part of the team that is actively taking action in ensuring that we reduce the biodiversity loss and ultimately the rate of climate change. Because I grew up in a highly industrialized area of Richards Bay in KZN, and I got to have a first-hand experience of what environmental degradation is, what air pollution is, and the loss of biodiversity, as well as important resources such as wetlands because of alien plantations. So that's what motivated me to get into this field, and just being able to actually have access into this field and every day wake up to work and combat environmental degradation is what is the main success for me in this journey. And the challenges, I'd say, there are everyday challenges, obviously, of any other job, or however, I think the one thing that has actually struck my attention is just realizing how low or the lack of knowledge or people have in terms of environmental legislation of South Africa in particular. And that's very worrying because these laws are actually based on the trends that are being observed in terms of biodiversity loss, in terms of pollution, and in terms of the rate of climate change in South Africa, but also in other countries. So it's quite critical that people should understand what it is that needs to be done, and what it is that they can do and cannot do in terms of the law. And in the future, I would really like to see a South Africa where people understand environmental law, because like I said, it's not just something that's made up. It's based on the trends that we're observing and the problems that we are facing as a country in terms of our environment. And if people are aware of what's right and what's wrong, I believe that we will see less degradation in the future. But also, understanding in legislation has the potential to trigger innovation. So, for instance, if someone knows that in South Africa, you cannot clear a hectare or more of indigenous vegetation, then without an environmental authorization, that is, then they will then start thinking about ways in which they could undertake the activities that they want to undertake, or do the development that they want to do without having to clear a hectare of vegetation. So that's where innovative ideas such as maybe stack planting came about, because you're trying to minimize the impact, the environmental impact. So yeah, that's the one. So far, that's all. That's the main problem that I've observed. And in the future, I just want to see a South Africa that is informed, young people that are informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nokulunga, and thank you for sharing this last reflection. That's really beautiful that you want to see a South Africa with young people that are informed and educated about environmental law and climate change. So now I believe we have some time for a few questions, and I see that we already got questions coming in the chat. So I would like to request our three speakers to join the floor and just stay with us for a few questions during the last minutes. So first out, I see a question to Himkar. Once the compost has been added to the soil, how long before it is restored to health and productive?
Yeah, so we typically, after putting vermicompost, we start planting the next week. It's because the vermicompost has an enormous amount of biology. And just for an idea, these are the earthworms. I think one is about to fall on my computer. These are the earthworms. And what makes this compost good is that it's got the bacteria from the gut of the earthworm. And that bacteria is a food for other microorganisms in the soil. So the vermicompost tends to be loaded with biology. And when we put that biology into the soil, it's immediately there. The challenge, though, is to keep it there. And typically, we've lost the practices of how to conserve the biology, and that is typically by feeding organic matter constantly to the soil and using mulch to protect it from the sun. If you can do those techniques, then you can start planting quite soon, within a few weeks. But yeah, typically it's quite fast acting.
Okay, and while we have you on the line, Himkar, we also have a question from Bigambia, wondering how is the sorting of the waste done?
We give customers a small bin, and they keep the bin in their house, and then they collect the kitchen waste every day. Then on collection day, they put the bin outside, and then we come by and collect the food waste. So the food waste is separated at the home already, and it's done very well by customers because they care a lot about this, and they're paying customers, you know, so they really get it. And so we don't have much of a problem with sorting.
Okay, thank you very much for explaining that. Then we have a question for Brittany. What role can satellite technology play in combating climate change?
So satellite technology can play a really big role in combating climate change in the sense of using satellite imagery for plotting out which spaces would be best for certain types of agriculture, and then also which locations would be best for conserving biodiversity. So where can we start planting more trees of native species, etc. And then also it would combat climate change in a sense of doing remote sensing for wildfires and other sorts of natural disasters that play a part in climate change.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Brittany. And that actually links a lot to what Nokulunga is doing as well. So we also have a question for Nokulunga. What are the mechanisms or techniques you will implement to make everyone involved in environmental protection?
So the number one thing to do is raise awareness. Like I was just saying now, one of the issues we've actually discovered is the lack of information when it comes to environmental legislation. And as a result, because people aren't aware of what's wrong and what's right, they're sometimes even unable to actually report on the people that are doing something wrong or that are undertaking activities that are causing degradation. So the number one tool that can be utilized at the moment and that we will ensure is raising awareness so that we ensure that the future generation is more informed than the current one when it comes to legislation. And that's the number one priority.
Thank you very much for elaborating on that. Okay, I see that we're running out of time, but I also see a question directed to UNDP, wondering how we support young people with innovation around climate change and circular economy. So I would actually like to call on my colleague Simone to perhaps elaborate a bit around that.
Thank you, Tuve, and thank you for the question. I think, at UNDP, we prioritize working with youth across all of our projects and try to ensure that all of our projects involve and engage with as many youth as possible. Specifically on the food waste project, we will be ensuring that at least 30% of the entrepreneurs, SMEs, and innovators that we support are youth. And we also ensure that we involve youth as broadly as possible in any workshops or trainings or content development that we put out there. So I know we're short on time, so that's just a quick answer, but you're welcome to pop me an email if you'd like any more information. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Simone. So that brings us to the end of this short session. But if you have any other questions to us as UNDP, please feel free to contact me, Simone, or Nokutula here today, and we can also put you in contact with our 3 amazing speakers that you met today. So please feel free to reach out. So with that, I'm going to hand over back to Julia, and thank you very much, everyone, for listening in to this session.
Thanks, everyone. That was a really interesting conversation. And as Tove was saying, you can reach out to them directly or keep the conversation going on our Spark Blue page, or we share the link in the chat box. You can also watch all the previous episodes of the Youth Climate Tour. Next week, we will keep the conversation going with another episode involving Iraq. So I will wait for you next week. And let me just share the link with you right now. And thank you again.